Visitor Center is back that way. Old-timer. The voice belonged to Technical Sergeant Marcus Davis. 8 years on the flight line. 3 deployments. He'd earned his stripes, and he knew it. His tone carried the casual dismissal of a man who'd dealt with confused civilians before. The old man didn't respond. He stood perfectly still, his gaze fixed on the silent beast before them. An F-15E Strike Eagle. 70 feet of American air superiority, sitting dead on the tarmac like a wounded predator. The jet's twin engines were cold. Its cockpit dark, diagnostic cables snaked from open panels like lifelines to a patient that wouldn't wake up. The old man's name was Henry Blake, 79 years old. His back slightly bent by decades of gravity. His hands resting calmly at his sides were road maps of wrinkles and old burns. He wore simple tan slacks and a faded blue windbreaker. An outfit that made him look like someone's grandfather who'd wandered too far from the base museum. Another technician, younger and eager, joined Davis. "Who's this?" "No idea," Davis muttered. "Probably thinks this is an air show." He raised his voice. "Sir, you need to head back to the gate. This is a restricted area. Active flight line." Henry's eyes, pale and clouded with age, finally shifted. But they didn't look at Davis. They traced the fuselage of the Eagle. Following lines only he seemed to see. He took a slow, deliberate step closer to the aircraft's landing gear. Davis's frustration, already simmering from 2 days of failed diagnostics, boiled over. "Sir," I said, "step away from the aircraft." He moved to intercept, placed a firm hand on Henry's shoulder. "This is a multi-million-dollar weapons system, not a photo opportunity." Henry's gaze finally met Davis's. There was no fear, no anger, just a quiet, profound focus. As if Davis were a minor interruption in a much more interesting problem. The pressure on the flight line was crushing. The grounded F-15 callsign Raptor 3-1 was supposed to lead a critical red flag training exercise. Foreign military observers were already waiting. The wing commander was making his displeasure known over the radio in increasingly sharp tones. Every technician felt the heat, but Davis, as crew chief, was taking the brunt of it. His team had been chasing ghosts for 48 hours. They'd replaced the entire radar warning receiver, swapped out power distribution units, run every diagnostic in the book. Nothing. The Eagle was a brick. This old man's appearance felt like an insult, a symbol of the universe's refusal to cooperate. "I need to see your base pass," Davis demanded. "Right now." Henry didn't reach for a wallet. Instead, his hand went slowly to his windbreaker pocket. He pulled out a small, worn leather case, dark with age and oil. Davis let out a short laugh. "What is that? Your toolkit?" A few other techs, drawn by the confrontation, chuckled. "What are you gonna do, fix a modern fighter jet with a screwdriver from the 60s? They were young, most in their mid-20s. They followed Davis's lead. The scene was becoming a spectacle. A circle forming around the dead jet, the uniformed crew, and the silent old civilian. "Sir, I'm not going to ask again," Davis said, his face reddening. "Get away from this aircraft, or I'm calling security force." Henry ignored the threat. His attention was elsewhere. He unrolled the leather case with slow, deliberate motion. Inside, nestled in soft felt, were not crude tools but a small, curated set of instruments. They were clearly old, some handmade, their metal darkened with patina of use. One was a small circuit tester with an unusual design. Davis stared, his derision deepening. "Are you kidding me? Where'd you get that junk?" "A flea market," he smirked at his crew. "I bet you flew props in Korea, didn't you, Pops?" Things were simpler back then. As Davis's mocking words hung in the hot Nevada air, Henry's fingers brushed the handle of the circuit tester. The feel of the worn metal was a key, unlocking a door in his mind. The world dissolved, from the bright sun-bleached tarmac to the dim, climate-controlled room of a design facility decades ago. St. Louis. McDonnell Douglas. 1982. A younger Henry, his face taut with focus, stood before a massive schematic board. The first F-15E prototype was taking shape. He was part of the team designing the integrated avionics suite. The very same circuit tester was in his hand. Brand new then. A senior engineer, a man with thick glasses and a perpetual coffee stain on his shirt, looked over his shoulder. Henry, we need that warning system bulletproof. These pilots are going to be flying into the teeth of Soviet air defense. One false alarm, one missed threat, and they're dead. Henry didn't answer. He just made one final adjustment. A circuit seated. The system powered up. Clean. Perfect. She'll fly, he said. The memory vanished. A whisper that informed the stillness of the present. Back on the tarmac, the confrontation had escalated. One of the younger techs, eager to impress Davis, chimed in. Maybe he thinks it's a car. Just needs a jump start. Laughter rippled through the small crowd. On the far side of the flight line, working on another aircraft, was Senior Master Sergeant Luis Reyes. 32 years in maintenance, he'd seen hotshot crew chiefs like Davis come and go. He'd been watching the confrontation with growing unease. At first, just annoyed that a civilian had gotten this far onto the tarmac. But then he started watching the old man more closely. It wasn't his clothes or his age. It was his posture. The way he stood. He wasn't looking at the F-15 like a tourist. He was studying it, assessing it. His gaze was methodical, moving from the nose cone to the engine intakes, to the specific panel Davis's team had been fighting with. It was the stance of a diagnostician, of a master craftsman sizing up flawed work. There was an economy of motion, an absolute stillness that Reyes hadn't seen in years. It reminded him of the old legends, the stories gray-haired chiefs used to tell about the original design teams, men who could listen to an engine and tell you which specific component was failing. Davis's patience finally snapped. He grabbed Henry's arm more forcefully. That's it, your little tour is over. We're going to see security forces. He started to pull the unresisting old man away from the jet. That was the moment for Senior Master Sergeant Reyes. Something clicked. A name from one of those old stories surfaced. He pulled out his phone, heart suddenly pounding. He didn't call security forces. He scrolled to a number he rarely used. The direct line to the maintenance group commander's office. The call was answered by a young lieutenant. Maintenance group, Lieutenant Sir, this is Senior Master Sergeant Reyes on the Charlie line, he said, voice low and urgent. We've got Raptor 3-1 down. Tech team's at a dead end, and their crew chief is about to have a civilian arrested. A civilian? How did a civilian get on an active flight line? That's the thing, sir. Reyes continued, watching Davis manhandle the old man. The way he's looking at the Eagle, it reminds me of the old stories, about the guys who built these birds. He paused. Sir, I think his name might be Blake. Henry Blake. The silence on the other end was immediate and absolute. The call landed like a bomb in the wing commander's office. Colonel Richard Matthews was in the middle of a tense briefing. The grounded F-15, the single, infuriating topic of conversation. His executive officer burst in without knocking, an act that would normally earn him a week of paperwork. Sir, you need to take this. It's about the civilian on the flight line. Matthews snatched the phone, his face a thundercloud. What? He listened, his expression shifting from anger to confusion to stunned disbelief. His knuckles went white on the receiver. Say that name again. He listened once more. Blake. Henry Blake. Are you absolutely certain? The colonel's face went pale. He shot to his feet. Get me his file. The archived one. The one marked Eagle Legacy. Now, the aide, sensing the seismic shift, sprinted from the office. Colonel Matthews grabbed his flight cap. Get the command vehicle. Clear the route to Charlie line. Tell security forces we have a code heritage situation. No one, and I mean no one, touches that man. He was out the door before his staff could respond. But on the sun-baked concrete, the stand-down order hadn't arrived yet. Davis, emboldened by Henry's continued silence, was asserting his authority. He still held Henry's thin arm, a symbol of control. He leaned in, voice dripping with condescension. Look, I get it. Things get confusing when you get older, but you're a safety hazard. For your own good, I'm taking you to security forces. They'll call your family. He was declaring the old man senile, a final public humiliation. He gave Henry's arm a firm tug. Let's go, show's over. It was at that precise moment that a new sound cut through the air. Not jet engines, not radio chatter, the piercing wail of sirens, getting closer fast, but not the familiar whoop-whoop of base patrol. This was the deep, commanding yelp of a wing commander's escort. Heads turned. In the distance, a black staff car flanked by two security forces trucks was racing toward them, lights flashing. They didn't slow, they accelerated, scattering airmen who leaped out of the way. The convoy screeched to a halt in perfect formation just yards from the grounded Eagle. creating a barrier between the crowd and Henry. The passenger door flew open before the vehicle fully stopped. Colonel Richard Matthews launched himself out, a full-bird colonel with a chest full of ribbon, his face a mask of controlled fury. He was followed by the maintenance group commander and the command chief. They moved with singular, terrifying purpose. The entire flight line froze. The arrival of a wing commander on the flight line was rare. The arrival of a colonel with his entire command staff moving like a tactical unit was unprecedented. Davis froze. His hand still clamped on Henry's arm, his mind failing to process the scene. Why was the base's top officer here? For him? For this old man? Colonel Matthews didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the multi-million-dollar jet. His eyes, burning with intensity that could melt steel, were locked on one person only. Henry Blake. He strode forward, his polished boots eating up the distance on the concrete. He walked right up to Davis, his gaze so fierce that the sergeant flinched as if physically struck. Matthews stopped 2 feet from them. He didn't yell. He didn't speak. He simply looked at Davis's hand on Henry's arm. The meaning was unmistakable. Davis snatched his hand away like the old man's sleeve was on fire. Then, Colonel Matthews turned his full attention to Henry. In one crisp, powerful motion, he brought his hand up to his brow and rendered the sharpest, most profound salute of his career. It was a gesture of such deep, unwavering respect that it seemed to vibrate in the silent air. "Mr. Blake," Colonel Matthews said, his voice ringing with emotion for all to hear. "It is an honor, sir." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd of airmen. Jaws dropped. Eyes widened. Davis looked as though the ground had vanished beneath his feet. He swayed slightly, face completely drained of color. Matthews held the salute for a long moment before slowly lowering his hand. He kept his back ramrod straight, addressing Henry but speaking loud enough for every person on the tarmac to hear. For the benefit of those who are too young or too ignorant to know whose presence they're in, Matthews began, his voice booming with authority. "This is Mr. Henry Blake." He paused, letting the weight of the name sink in. In the 1980s and 90s, Mr. Blake was a lead avionics engineer for the F-15E Strike Eagle program at McDonnell Douglas. He personally designed the integrated radar warning receiver system that has saved countless lives. Matthews took a step closer, his eyes scanning the faces of the stunned young airmen. He wrote 4 chapters of the technical manual you use every day. He holds 3 patents on the avionics suite. During Desert Storm, when a software glitch threatened to ground an entire squadron, this man flew into a combat zone and personally debugged the system. In the field, under fire, he paused for effect. 24 aircraft, 48 hours, no fanfare, no medal. He just did the work and went home. The silence on the tarmac was now pure, unadulterated awe. Senior Master Sergeant Reyes, watching from the edge, simply nodded, a look of profound validation on his face. He had recognized greatness. This man, Colonel Matthews concluded, his voice softening with reverence as he looked at Henry, is not just a retired engineer. He is a living part of this aircraft's soul. He has forgotten more about the F-15 than any of us will ever know. Finally, the full weight of what he'd done crashed down on Dave. He hadn't just disrespected an old man. He'd mocked a founding father. He'd threatened a legend. Colonel Matthews then turned. The warmth in his expression vanished, replaced by a gaze as cold and hard as Arctic ice. He fixed it on Davis. "Sergeant," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "Leith, what is your name?" "Davis, sir." "Technical Sergeant Marcus Davis," he stammered, his own name sounding foreign in his mouth. "Sergeant Davis," Matthews said, the name tasting like poison. "Your arrogance and ignorance today have brought shame to this wing. You were faced with a problem you couldn't solve, a failure of your own technical skill, and you chose to channel that failure into cruelty." He stepped closer, voice dropping lower. "You chose to humiliate a man whose boots you are not worthy of polish. You looked at a living legend and saw nothing but a target for your own inadequacy." His eyes burned. "You are a disgrace to that uniform." The public rebuke was devastating. A professional execution performed in front of the entire flight line. Davis stood paralyzed, unable to look away from the colonel's wrath. But then a quiet voice cut through the tension. "Colonel, that's enough." It was Henry. He had been silent throughout the ordeal, but now he spoke. His voice was not strong, but it carried undeniable authority that even the colonel instantly obeyed. Matthews fell silent. Henry Blake turned to the trembling young man. He looked at Davis, not with anger or pity, but with the calm gaze of a teacher. "Son," he said gently, "the machine doesn't care about your rank. It doesn't care about your pride. It only cares about the truth of the problem." He raised a slightly shaky hand, pointed not at the complex avionics bay where Davis's team had been working, but at a small, almost hidden access panel near the nose gear. "You are looking in the wrong place," Henry explained. "You are looking at the brain. The problem isn't in the brain. It's in the nerves." He pointed again. "That's the main power distribution node for the forward avionics bay. It's a known issue on Block 50 variants, especially after extended time in desert heat. The circuit breaker gets thermal stress, trips internally without showing external fault." He looked down at the small leather case in his hand, unrolled it, picked out a simple circuit tester. "You don't need a computer. You just need to check the basics." As Davis hesitantly reached for the tool, the world flickered for Henry. He saw himself, 30 years young, standing in a pristine testing facility in St. Louis. A brilliant engineer with kind eyes. The program lead was handing him this very tester. "Henry," the man had said, "sometimes the most complex problems don't need a complex solution. They just need someone who remembers the fundamental." Never forget that. Davis's fingers closed around the tester. It felt strangely balanced in his hand, under the silent gaze of the colonel, his crew and the man he'd ridiculed. He walked to the F-15. He knelt down, movement stiff with dread and humiliation. He found the access panel Henry indicated, opened it carefully. Inside was a neat array of circuit breakers, all showing green, all appearing normal. But Henry spoke again. "Third from the left. Bottom row. Test it." Davis placed the tester's probes on the breaker contacts. The needle swung, then dropped. No continuity. The breaker had failed internally. Every diagnostic computer said it was fine, but it was dead. Davis stared at the meter, his hands beginning to shake. "Reset it," Henry said quietly. "Push it in. All the way." Davis reached in, found the breaker. It felt normal, but he pushed harder than usual. Click. A soft, satisfying click. And then magic. The F-15's cockpit displays flickered to life. One by one, green glow filling the canopy. The aircraft's internal systems began their startup sequence. A chorus of relays clicking, hydraulic pumps whining to life. The Eagle was waking up. A wave of astonished murmurs swept through the crowd. The problem that had stumped a team of trained technicians with thousands of dollars of diagnostic equipment for 2 days had just been solved. In 30 seconds, with a simple circuit tester, and the knowledge of a man they'd tried to throw off the base. Colonel Matthews stared at the illuminated cockpit, then back at Henry, profound respect on his face. He turned to the maintenance group commander. "I want Sergeant Davis and his entire team off the line. They're to report for a 2-week intensive training course, starting Monday morning." He looked at Henry. "The topic will be F-15 systems fundamentals and legacy knowledge. And the first week will be taught by Mr. Blake, if he'll do us the honor." He paused. "A formal letter of apology will be drafted, and this incident will become a case study at every maintenance training school in the Air Force." Henry gave a small nod. "I'll do it, Colonel. But not as punishment. As education." Matthews smiled, a genuine, warm smile. "Understood, sir." He turned to Davis, whose face was a mask of shame and confusion. "Sergeant, you're not being punished. You're being taught. There's a difference. Learn from it." 3 weeks later, Davis sat in a small classroom on base, along with his entire crew. Henry Blake stood at the front, not in a suit, just simple clothes. A whiteboard behind him. "I'm not here to make you feel bad," Henry began, his voice quiet. "I'm here to teach you something that computers can't." He picked up a marker, drew a simple circuit diagram. "This is the F-15's main power distribution system. Looks simple, right? It is. But simple doesn't mean easy, and modern doesn't mean better." He looked at the young faces. "You've been trained on the latest diagnostic equipment. Software that can run thousands of tests. That's good. That's important. But it's not everything. He tapped the board. When I designed this system, we didn't have those computers. We had to understand every electron's path, every failure mode, every stress point. He turned to face them. You relied on the computer. The computer said everything was fine, so you assumed it was operator error, or a ghost problem. But the computer was wrong. Davis shifted uncomfortably. Not because the computer is bad, Henry continued, but because the computer only knows what it's told to look for. It can't think. It can't adapt. It can't use experience. He walked closer. That's what you need to develop. The ability to think beyond the checklist, to trust your instincts, to remember that sometimes the simplest answer is the right one. For 2 weeks, Henry taught them, not just about circuits and systems, but about how to think, how to diagnose, how to approach a problem with humility instead of arrogance. Davis listened, really listened. For the first time in years, he felt like a student again. Not an expert, a student, and it was humbling, but also liberating. On the last day of training, Davis approached Henry after class. The other students had left. It was just the two of them. Mr. Blake, Davis began, his voice uncertain. I wanted to say I'm sorry for how I treated you. There's no excuse. Henry looked at him, really looked at him, assessing. You were doing your job, Henry said finally. You were protecting the aircraft, protecting the flight line. That's not wrong. But I was cruel, Davis insisted. I mocked you. I grabbed you. I tried to humiliate you. Henry was quiet for a moment. You were frustrated, scared, under pressure. People make mistakes under those conditions. He placed a hand on Davis's shoulder. The question isn't whether you made a mistake. It's whether you learned from it. Davis nodded. I did. I really did. Then we're good, Henry said simply. Davis hesitated. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why did you come to the flight line that day? How did you even know about the problem? Henry smiled, a small, knowing smile. I still have friends in the maintenance world. They call me sometimes. Ask for advice. When I heard about Raptor 3-1, I recognized the symptoms. I've seen that failure mode before. He paused. So I drove out. Figured I could help. Didn't expect to cause such a fuss. Davis laughed. A genuine laugh. You definitely caused a fuss. Henry chuckled. Yeah, I guess I did. They stood there for a moment. Not as sergeant and civilian. Not as young and old. But as two people who understood each other. Thank you, Davis said. For the lesson. For your patience. For everything. Henry nodded. Just pass it on. When you're the old guy someday, and some hotshot dismisses you, remember how it felt, and teach them better. I will, Davis promised. 6 months after the incident, Colonel Matthews instituted a new program across the entire Air Force. It was called Heritage Knowledge Initiative. The concept was simple. Bring retired engineers, mechanics, and specialists back to work with active duty personnel. Not as supervisors, as mentors. The program started at Nellis, but within a year, it had expanded to every major base. Henry Blake became the face of the program, not because he sought attention, but because his story resonated. He spent 2 days a week at various bases, teaching, mentoring, solving impossible problems, and he loved it. Not for the recognition, but because he was doing what he'd always done best, making sure the aircraft flew, making sure the pilots came home. Davis, meanwhile, had transformed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by quiet confidence and genuine humility. He became one of the best crew chiefs on base, and he credited Henry for that transformation. He taught me that being good at your job isn't about knowing everything. Davis told a reporter doing a story on the Heritage program. It's about knowing when to ask for help, when to listen, when to admit you don't have all the answers. The reporter asked if he regretted that day on the tarmac. Davis thought about it. I regret how I acted. Absolutely. But I don't regret that it happened, because it taught me the most important lesson of my career, which is respect, not just for rank, but for knowledge, for experience, for the people who came before us, and built the things we depend on. 2 years after that day on the tarmac, Henry Blake was at home, reading the newspaper. His phone rang. It was Colonel Matthews. Henry, I wanted to give you an update on the Heritage program. I'm listening. We've expanded it to all services, Army, Navy, Marines. Everyone's doing it now, bringing back the old hands, the legends. Henry smiled. That's good. That's really good. And it's all because of you, Matthews said. Because you walked onto that flight line and showed us what we'd been missing. I just fixed a circuit breaker, Richard. Matthews laughed. You did a lot more than that. You reminded us that progress isn't just about new technology. It's about preserving knowledge, respecting experience, bridging generations. He paused. We're hosting a ceremony at Nellis next month, honoring the program's founders. You're first on the list. Will you come? Henry thought about it. Only if Davis can introduce. Matthews smiled on the other end. I think that can be arranged. The ceremony was small, intimate, just the people who mattered. Davis stood at the podium, in dress blues, looking sharp and professional. 2 years ago, he began. I made the worst mistake of my career. I disrespected a man who deserved nothing but honor. I mocked his knowledge. I dismissed his expertise. I tried to have him thrown off the base. He paused. That man is here today, and I owe him everything. He gestured to Henry, sitting in the front row, looking uncomfortable with the attention. Mr. Henry Blake taught me that being a good technician isn't about having the latest tools or the fanciest computers. It's about having the wisdom to know when to use them, and when to go back to basics. He looked directly at Henry. Sir, you changed my life. You changed this entire program. Thank you. The room erupted in applause. Henry stood, slowly, and walked to the stage. Davis extended his hand. Henry took it, then pulled the younger man into a brief hug. The photographer captured the moment. Young and old, student and teacher, past and future. It became the official photo of the Heritage Knowledge Initiative, and it hung in maintenance facilities across every Air Force base in the world. A reminder that legends walk among us, that respect is earned through knowledge, not just rank, and that sometimes, the oldest tools are still the best ones, because they're wielded by hands that remember.